My wife cheated on her then boyfriend with me. It is among the best times of my life. I met my wife while she was in a relationship with someone else. I was instantly attracted to her, and she and I quickly became good friends. I met her then boyfriend for the first time some weeks after meeting her, and my very first thought after being introduced to him was, oh yeah, I can wait this out. Throughout the course of that evening, he gave off the vibe that he was trying extremely hard to make sure I and everyone else he was meeting came away with the impression that he was just the coolest, that their relationship was solid. I knew better though, not from anything specific that she told me, but from just how tired she looked anytime she talked about him. No matter what she said, good, bad, or anything in between, she just looked exhausted every time he came up in conversation and any time I saw them together. In the months that followed, I would see him occasionally, but I saw her almost every day because we worked together. We became very close, eventually confirming to each other that we were best friends. I had by that point been saying to myself for some time that I was in love with her. I continued to bide my time. Over the winter, she found herself in a situation where she had no transportation to work. I offered her rides whenever she needed them. Her boyfriend had the time and the capability to take her to work, but didn't want to, so I got to instead. I would take her every chance I got, even on my days off, even when her shift started at 4 a.m. This became the status quo for several months, and on these rides we became quite close. I was loving every second of it. Every moment with her was a gift, and still is almost a decade later. She opened up to me about how terrible her relationship was. She told me about how he yelled at her, manipulated her, abused her verbally, emotionally, sometimes sexually. It was sometimes pretty raw. On one occasion, a coworker of ours was having a shindig in their place and invited several other coworkers and their partners for drinks and games. I asked her if she and her boyfriend were planning on attending. She said they were. I was, as ever, excited to see her despite the presence of her boyfriend. As it happened, however, he decided he didn't want to come. I think he expected her to stay home with him, but she boldly told him she was going anyway. When she showed up without him, I was over the moon. That night, she relaxed in a way I hadn't seen before. She was loose, confident, and really, really funny. It was incredible to see her come alive like that. I had always known that version of her was there, and it was wonderful to see it come out among friends. We remained close to each other the whole night. When it came time to play a game, Cards Against Humanity, I think, I sat down on a big comfy chair, designed for one person, but big enough for two if they were willing to cuddle. We were, and we did. It was electric. I'll never forget the feeling when she sat down next to me, my arm around her. It was the first time in many years that I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Over the next few months, her relationship with her boyfriend really started to deteriorate. After work one day, she asked me to just take her to my place. Her boyfriend wouldn't be home for a few more hours, and she didn't want to be in their shared space. We cuddled up on my couch and watched a movie, just enjoying each other's presence. Near the end of the movie, she glanced at her phone and saw she had missed several texts and calls from her boyfriend. She asked me to pause the movie and she called him back. I sat on the couch next to her while she spoke with him. He immediately started screaming at her for not being at home, and I was able to hear it all. Never in my life have I heard such vile things. I was absolutely taken aback. I'd never witnessed such abuse, and it was over the phone. I couldn't even imagine the hell she must have been living in. She told him she was coming home and asked me to take her. I asked if she was sure. I was horrified at the thought of taking her to that environment, but she kept telling me that the blow-up that I had just witnessed was not even that bad. Up to that point, we hadn't ever talked about her breaking up with him. On the drive to her place, the subject came up. She expressed fear that no one else would ever want to be with her. In response, I said, I would date the shit out of you. I also told her that no matter what, I would never, ever treat her like what I just witnessed. Abusive relationships are very hard to leave, and she stayed with him for a few more months. In that time, she and I got closer and closer. Eventually, the tension was too much for us, and our physical relationship, which had been only frequent hugs and occasional cuddling to that point, became even more physical, and the sex was better than anything either of us had experienced. The first time was awkward, but the second time was glorious. It's only gotten better in the time since. For 29 days she cheated on him with me. It was the most exciting, thrilling 4 weeks of my entire life. We fell deeply, madly in love with each other. He never confronted her specifically about her and I, but I suspect he knew in his gut he'd lost control over her. He did not react well to the loss of control, and it took myself and several of our other close friends to convince her to leave after she told us that he had pushed her down the stairs. One day, while he was at work, a few of us took our lunch hour together, went to her place, and cleaned it out of all her stuff as quickly as we could, and got her out of there. I don't think she ever saw him again. A week or two later, and we were both ready to be with one another. We made it official, and have been in a happy, healthy, and thriving relationship ever since. We married one another almost 2 years ago, and have been together nearly 9. As for her ex, shortly after she left him, he briefly moved back to their hometown and began dating an old acquaintance of theirs much younger than he was. They moved to Alaska, where he employed the same abusive patterns he had used on my wife. Only this time he was much, much worse. He beat her pretty badly a few times and was arrested. My wife provided written testimony at his trial. He was convicted and sentenced to probation, and he cannot leave the state of Alaska for several more years. I hope he rots up there. Up until I met him, I don't know that I can say that I'd ever truly hated anyone. It's such a strong word, but I hate that man. What he did to my wife and other women with the misfortune to have come across his path is not something I'll ever forgive. No one else should either. My wife doesn't feel the same way as I do about how we got together. For me, it was thrilling, and I look back on that time fondly. But for her, it was traumatic, which I totally understand. It's been difficult for her to process. We don't talk about it much, and that's okay. I'm so grateful for my wife. I love her so much, and I have and will continue to make sure that she feels like she made the right choice in being with me every single day. I know it wasn't an easy one for her to make. ETA. Many of you have pointed out that I shouldn't take any pleasure in the time during which my wife was being abused. You're right. I definitely don't revel in the fact that she was abused, and it wasn't my intention to convey that I do. I didn't manipulate her, she chose me, and I chose her. I choose her every single day. That's what I revel in. I don't believe in the concept of soulmates, but that's what she and I are. I don't know how else to describe it. When we met, it felt as if we'd always been connected in some way. This is something she and I talk about often. It would take more than several posts to describe the depth and strength of our connection. I'm sorry so many of you have been cheated on. A lot of you surely didn't deserve it. Sounds like some of you did, though. My wife's ex is a guy that is among that latter smaller group. Thank you for listening. If you like this video, please give it a like and write your opinion in the comments. See you soon.